This is what Iranian state TV meant to show. But in the most audacious protest yet, hackers broadcast an image of the Ayatollah with a target on his head and told viewers to rise up and join them. The wide-eyed disbelief as the presenter reappears speaks volumes. The scale of rebellion was once unthinkable, but has now entered its fourth week, sparked by the death of Mahsa Amini, an Iranian Kurd who died in custody after being detained by morality police for allegedly not covering her hair properly. 185 people, including 19 children, have been killed in the protests, according to human rights groups. This man was allegedly shot after beeping his horn in support of demonstrators. But if the Iranian regime thought they could crush discontent with bullets and arrests, then so far they've failed. Each act of defiance has emboldened the next. In Tehran this weekend, students chant "Get lost" towards the country's president, heckling him to get off their campus after he condemned the protests, equating demonstrators with flies. The unrest has been led by the younger generation. This was in Mashhad. The person filming claims it's a child that's being beaten up by security forces. And in the latest desperate attempt to crack down on the dissent, reports today of a total closure of schools and higher education institutions in Iranian Kurdistan and arrests of children in classrooms.
And other government officials continue to insist that these are a very small number of people that can be managed. We're into the second month of it almost, and there is no sign of it abating. And the talk of a revolution is very explicitly coming out of Iran.
Is that what you think might happen?
It is impossible to say. Depends on, in the short term, how much violence will be used and how effective it will be. Indeed, they have used a lot of violence. There are many people, hundreds of people killed so far, and it has not put down the protests. But it looks like we're looking at a generation who is saying that this current status quo simply cannot go on, or we have no futures.
The regime is accused of preemptively detaining people, including journalists, teachers, lawyers and human rights activists, which critics claim is to crush the societal outcry over the government's repression and brutality. These protests may ultimately not prevail, but for the women and girls leading it, who are too young to have witnessed revolutions of the past, they've at very least given the original revolutionaries, those now in power, possibly their greatest challenge yet.
Well, earlier I spoke with Roya Borumand, who's co-founder of a human rights group closely following events in Iran. And I began by asking her whether the ongoing protests gave her a sense of hope or dread.
Well, the fact that the protests are ongoing, despite the number of people who have been killed and the number of arrests, is giving me hope and is giving a lot of people hope, and at the same time concern about where this will go. They are fed up with waiting for a change that is not coming. They are fed up because they are subjected to discrimination, they are subjected to humiliation and violence, and they've been for decades, and they just are not as patient as their parents.
There were reports on social media today that school children have been arrested inside schools today. I wondered if you could give us a sense of the crackdown that we're seeing and how it compares to previous protests.
Well, you know, arrests, mass arrests are systematic after any protest. So this is not new. I think what maybe is new is the speed with which all activists and former political prisoners have been arrested or are in hiding, even if they haven't participated in the protests. That gives me a sense of concern by the government that things are out of control.
And given the scale of the crackdown, how significant was it, in your view, that Iran's main news channel was targeted and hacked?
It's not the first time that they are hacked, but it is significant that there are more people inside and outside the country who are fed up and want the clerics out. They want the clerics out of government, and they want the clerics out of lawmaking, because that's how reform has been blocked, is that the system is built and the laws are drafted in a way that control remains in the hands of a small number of clerics. And the more each protest, you see more people and more diverse people realizing that. But also, I think there is no hope that of progressive change. And because people don't have anywhere else to go, they can't form political parties if they are not part of the ruling elite. They can't be elected to parliament in order to pass laws to change things, because they are vetted by the same people who are controlling the country. And so they have nowhere else to go to show discontent. Right. And that's why they put themselves in front of the bullets.
So at what point does this become a full-blown revolution? What is the tipping point?
Well, I think when there are strikes, nationwide strikes, that not like 5 high schools and 10 high schools, but 500 high schools go on strike, that 500 universities go on strike, the oil sector goes on strike. I mean, today the bazaar, sections of the bazaar in Tehran were closed. This is significant because the bazaar is closely linked to the ruling elite. And if they feel like they have to close, that shows also, that's also an important sign. But it also depends on solidarity outside the country. I think if the army needs to change sides, because that's when the 1979 happened, the revolution happened, is the army declared neutrality.
Roya Baraman, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.